Okay, so yeah, it's Vanessa, welcome once again, and we are thankful to you and thankful to Rodney as well for sparing of your valuable time. And you are in your off office hours, but still you are attending this wonderful event and addressing our new exporters and importers who are very excited to get entered into the international trade. And but still they are having, they are beginners, and they are like having a myths into the mind, and they are not having a very much clarity about the things into the market. As you are into this industry since last 30 years, so you have seen every ups and downs, you have seen every different kinds of mistakes, every kinds of possible operation challenges. So you have been through everything. So just I would like to request that guide these people, and they can make a good trade relationship with Australia or any corner of the world, and accordingly they can help the to increase the trade of the world, sustainable trade. So that is why we can go ahead into this. So yeah, the stage is yours, Vanessa, and we may start the presentation.
Thank you very much, everybody, for having me here this evening. You'll have to forgive us. It's just after 7:30 our time here in Australia, so we are not at the office anymore. We're doing this from home, but thank you very much for having us. I was really excited for this opportunity because I think there are some magnificent opportunities between India and Australia. And there's also some key things that we need to pay attention to in order to be able to ensure that the trade that you have is there for the long term, not just for the short term. And that's essentially what we're here to do tonight, to bring some information to you, to answer any questions that you might have, to give you a bit of guidance on the Australian market. Certainly, the opportunities are increasing, particularly between the free trade agreement between our two countries, and it's only going to get more. So the purpose of this evening so far is we have done a PowerPoint presentation, and I'm not sure whether we're actually able to put any of that up at all. Were you able to get the presentation up?
Shall I, or
Yeah, were your team able
yeah,
to
sure, sure.
add the presentation on?
Yeah, just a moment.
So essentially, the main things that we're planning on talking about this evening is customs clearance. So what we need to do for Australian customs regulations and procedures, HS codes, duty, GST implications, key documents that you need to look for Australian customs clearance, product controls, quarantine and biosecurity, the free trade agreement, and any compliance requirements. So that's one of the big things, because essentially what we need to do first is we need to make sure that we're compliant in order to be able to facilitate the trade. We're then going to go into a little bit about shipping logistics and solutions, and essentially we're just going to look at transit times, air and sea options. We're going to cover over Incoterms and the importance of Incoterms and making sure that the Incoterms that you use between your buyer and your seller are accurate and are covering everything that it is that you need to cover. So we're just going to go to the next slide, if that's okay. Thank you. And then the last part of it is we're going to look at market opportunities for Indian exporters. So we're going to look at the main trade that's happening between India and Australia at the moment. We're going to have a look at some future opportunities that we think are going to be coming through. We're going to be looking at market entry strategies, how to market your product in Australia for boosted sales, some common mistakes that we see happening as far as trade is concerned, and some key takeaways and some compliance in order to be able to make sure, again, that you can actually get into this market and you can actually stay in this market and you can expand your opportunities in this market. Because obviously the opportunities are there, but we don't want you just to get in for a short term and then get out. We want you to come in, we want your products to stay, and we want you to have great success in the market. So if we can move on to the next slide, please. So our presenters this evening, I have to apologise in advance because Colin, our customs expert, he is unfortunately unwell and he's unable to join us this evening. So, but I actually do have my business partner, Rodney Drake, with us this evening. Rodney is actually not a customs, but he's more business management, sales, market development, quality, compliance, safety, all of those areas. Rodney's done some key management roles in Australia Post before. He's worked in some different government organisations, and he's got extensive experience in logistics and distribution. And obviously myself, Rodney's one of the owners of Complete Global Solutions, and I am one of the others. I've been in the industry for a very long time, unfortunately, but I love it. And I've been in logistics, I've been in sourcing and procurement, I've done some work in shipping lines before. I've also worked in importers and exporters before. So I have that real retail and commercial focus. I have a very big sustainability focus because obviously I believe that that is the way that so many of our businesses are going and so many of our markets and our products are going. And I aim to try and ensure that all of our people that we deal with can get their products in, and they're actually going to be products that are going to be compliant for where we see a lot of our governments going to in the future. So if we can go to the next slide, please. This is where we're just going to be talking about essentially the opportunities that are coming through. As we know that there is a free trade agreement now between Australia and India, and we're actually going to be furthering that at the moment for an advanced economic cooperation between our two governments. There's a lot of markets that are going through where Australia is concerned is aiming to bring India through as one of our key trading partners across the next couple of years. And essentially, you would be seeing that a lot with a lot of other countries where they're looking to find a Chinese alternative. And the opportunities as far as Indian products are concerned with their push on manufacturing, their quality products, they're getting further as far as their advancement on their logistics and their infrastructure is concerned. And the Australian market is really receptive to Indian products. If we can go to the next slide, please. So let's start on the compliance side of things first. And this is where I'm actually going to be covering over column information, if you'll excuse me. So one of the big things that we find that impedes a lot of customers coming into the Australian market is the need to comply with Australian customs legislations. And this is the really big part where we say, don't try and take shortcuts in your documentation and your processes. The best way that you can do is to learn the information, because the more you can make sure that you are compliant as an exporter, the more the Australian buyers are going to be receptive to you, and the more they are likely to promote your products going through. So penalties do actually comply for non-compliance with customs legislations, and the offences, they don't need to be proven. The information needs to be there. We need to make sure that we get it right. Things can actually be held. It can add to extra costs. Your product can be sent back. Above all, you can just actually end up with a very unhappy buyer. And you know, as soon as you end up with an unhappy buyer anywhere, that's the end of your thing. HS codes, I'm fairly sure probably a lot of you are aware of HS codes. They're essentially the global classification of what your products are. This is where it's important to get your HS codes because of the free trade agreement between Australia and India, because the HS code will be what will dictate whether your product comes in duty-free or not. The more your product comes in duty-free, the less your product costs, the more greatly it is received here in Australia, and also vice versa. So the same with Australian exporters going through into India. Duty and tax, obviously, if your HS code fits in within the duty-free status, you don't have to pay duty on your product. Import GST is obviously applicable for the majority of products coming into Australia, and that's levied at 10% of the CIF value. Go into Incoterms later, but essentially the cost of your goods, any duty, the cost of your freight, and a nominal insurance, and then 10% of that will be the import GST applied to your product. That has to be paid before the product can be taken off the port. In many instances, some shippers try and take the GST themselves. I would advise against that, because the Australian importer can claim that GST back when they do their accounting. And from your perspective, you can't claim that back if you're in India, but the Australian importer can. So in all instances, you should leave things like the GST back to the Australian company. Again, we're going to get into the compliance side of things, because we say, don't try and undervalue your product. Don't try and misdeclare your product. don't try and go through anything that you think might make it easier in order to be able to get a quick sale or get it through. The better you are with your compliance, particularly because the Australian government is so strict on many of these things. And a lot of people see that as something that stops them from trading to Australia. My advice is get it right, learn the process, because that then expands your opportunities so greatly that you can then not sell to just one supplier, you can sell to multiple suppliers. Because as soon as you can show that you know what's required for the Australian import requirements, the Australian importers are going to love you. And that is, of course, what it is that you're hoping to be able to get your product in as much as you can to as many different people as you can. So if we can go to the next slide, please. Key documents for Australian customs clearance. I think for the most part, if you are already trading, a lot of these will be familiar to you already. Commercial invoice has to be in English, needs to have an invoice number, description of your goods, value and your currency, a packing list, a packing declaration, and we can share templates with you for everybody if they need these. A packing declaration is required for every sea freight shipment, and this is the document that most exporters get wrong. It must be done by the Indian exporter, and it pertains to the packing material used for the consignment. So not the cargo, but how it is that you've packed the cargo, whether it's packed on timber pallets, whether it's being used any dunnage material, anything that you've done to pack your consignment must be declared on this sea freight consignment. If you do not do it, your cargo will get inspected, and that's extra costs, time, unhappy customer. Bill of lading or airway bill, depending on sea or freight. The certificate of origin for the India Free Trade Agreement. That's very important because you want your product to be duty free. Again, if no duty is payable, that's a cheaper product, better opportunities for you in the market. Fumigation certificate if the goods are made of timber, an import permit depending upon the nature of the goods. And then we get into documents that might be specific to the nature of the cargo that you're dealing with. And these can be various: hazardous documents, asbestos declaration, illegal docking, new and unused declarations. These will be particular to the nature of the product that you are sending. The best thing that you can do there, if you've got a particular product that you want to get into the Australian marketplace, reach out to someone like us. We can help guide you on exactly what documents you're going to need. And that way you can make sure that you're compliant, and we can give you a full list based on the nature of your product. And that might be the easiest way for the ones that are specific to the nature of your product. Next slide, please. Import product controls. For the most part in Australia, the importer will not require an import permit. However, there will be some things that will be prohibited or that will be listing as far as restricted items are concerned. Motor vehicles, very important as far as cars are concerned. They need to go through particular information with Department of Transport. Yachts, animals, antiques, human remains, precious metal, intellectual property. These are all consignments that you will find import regulations in pretty much every country that you deal with globally. So it won't come as a surprise to you that Australia won't be any different as far as those ones are concerned. Next slide, please. Quarantine and biosecurity. This is probably one of the areas that is going to be the biggest area for everybody, particularly if you're doing something like food, plant materials such as baskets or any of those kind of things. All of these are going to be subject to quarantine and biosecurity. And it's one of the biggest growing areas with rules with regards to imports, especially plant food and animal-based imports. Nothing should be sent into Australia without first having the product checked by a customs broker to determine if it's allowed and under what conditions. Food items are very strict controls, particularly on the form they take, their ingredients, and in some cases, the origin of the ingredients. Anything containing dairy, egg, meat ingredients, strictly controlled, and this does vary on the percentage of the ingredients if they're cooked and shelf stable. Rules vary depending upon the answers to this point. Many products based on plants, leaves to powdered product subject to capra beetle concerns may even be restricted. Your local customs broker will actually help you with everything that you need to do on these. Any products based on grains are controlled depending upon where the goods are to be delivered to. Can even be additional treatment requirements. All wooden products have to be treated prior to export or treated upon arrival. And there's quite a lot of different documents required to meet biosecurity concerns. So again, I would stress to you, ask somebody like us. We can actually help guide you as far as all those things are concerned. Next slide, please. Looking at the India and Australia Free Trade Agreement, and this is obviously a massive component for us as far as ongoing trade opportunities are concerned. And I think it's actually going to get better. So at the moment, over 85% of Australian goods exports to India become tariff-free. 96% of Indian imports to Australia are now tariff-free, and that'll be 100% in 4 years. And this is a significant step towards the India Comprehensive Economic Agreement. And we're going to find that these opportunities are going to increase. So this is a really good time for Indian exporters to get into the Australian market, and similarly for Indian importers to look to Australia for the kind of products that they feel that they can bring out into their market as well. There are particular things that you need to do to comply, and that will be essentially completing your certificate of origin, working out where your goods are. If your product has come in from China, there will be a particular component of development that your product will need to go through in order to be able to comply. And again, we can actually support you in those kind of things because it's important to make sure that you're actually compliant with the rules set out by the Free Trade Agreement, similarly for Australian exporters going to India. But it does mean that the opportunities for your product, particularly when you see some instances with products duty rates being anywhere from 5, 10, 15, 20%, to bring that down to zero is a magnificent opportunity for the pricing and the landed cost of your goods here in Australia. Next slide, please. So this is the tricky part. Obviously, the customs compliance is a really big component, and it's the bit that brings a lot of people issues in starting their move into the Australian market. Some people will call it a non-tariff barrier because essentially there are so many document requirements that you need to complete. And if you get it wrong, your product will sit there, it will get delayed, there will be extra costs, you'll have inspections, your customer will be unhappy, all of the things that will make it difficult for you to continue your move into the Australian market. So the big thing here, as far as we say for key takeaways, strict compliance with the laws. Don't try and take shortcuts. Make sure you get your information right at the beginning because it's just going to make your opportunity so much better. Make sure your information's accurate. Indian products are already known for their high quality standards. And obviously the Australian market is really looking to that at the moment. And I think this is where you're going to find so many more opportunities that's there for you. Limit your changes to information. Avoid making frequent changes to shipment details, as this may trigger red flags and lead to inspections. You'll get penalties if you're inaccurate, incorrect documentation, or misdeclared. Things can result in financial penalties and unhappy buyers. Stricter laws, understanding your legal obligations, and then making sure that you're aware of your GST implications and leaving that GST import part to your buyer so they can claim it back as part of their ongoing accounting regulations. They're the main things that I would say to everybody as far as Australian customs are concerned. They're really good opportunities. Just make sure you take the time to get your things right at the beginning because it will make it so much easier for you going forward. Next part, we're going to move into the shipping and the logistics solutions. And this is obviously going to be concerned about physically getting your product from India to Australia or importing your product in from Australia. Increased opportunities because of the free trade agreement. We're looking at far more transport opportunities between Australia and India and vice versa at the moment. Sea freight, we're talking about 27 to 38 days, less than a container load. So if you don't have enough for a full container load, There's some really good consolidation services. So you need to add about another 7 to 12 days on top of that. Multiple airlines moving between India and Australia. A transit time will normally be about 3 to 7 days. Incoterms, we're going to go into some greater detail on, because this is really important for you to look at what your Incoterms are between your shipper and between yourself and your buyer, because that's going to talk about who's in charge of the costs, who's in charge of the liability, who's in charge of all of that side of things, particularly when things might go wrong. Marine insurance. Do not send your cargo without marine insurance, and your Incoterms will be determining who it is that's going to pay for that marine insurance. There are too many issues associated with not sending marine insurance for your cargo. It's really not worth not doing it. Warehousing and distribution, we're going to touch on that because there's going to be some good opportunities for you to have a look at how to actually physically get your product around in the market from there. So if we can move to the next slide, please. Only purpose of this map is obviously just to give you a bit of an idea. A lot of the questions that we get from exporters overseas is, what is the best load port in order to be able to get your cargo to? So we're talking about the different key areas: Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, Perth, and Darwin up in the Northern Territory. They are your main key regional areas that you're going to send through to into Australia. And then from there, there'll be different suburbs in each area, similar to what it is that you're doing from your side of things. The main thing that we're talking about here is the fact that there are some really good options to be able to go through. There's some good systems that are going through. Most of the sea freight will be done transshipping via Singapore at the moment, sometimes Malaysia. That can give you a few delays. It's important for you, as far as your landed costing and as far as your discussions with your consignee is concerned, is to be aware of how long it will take your product to get there, and obviously ship with the most mindful manner that suits the nature of your product. So if we can move to the next slide, please. All right, this is the tricky part. This is where we get into the Incoterms. And obviously there's going to be a lot here where some people may already be familiar with Incoterms and others might be completely unfamiliar. I'm not going to go into this table. Will give you an idea of exactly what the definitions, the names of each are, and it then shows you who is actually responsible for different bits. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover over some of the things that are common mistakes in picking Incoterms. So a lot of people do the wrong Incoterm selection. Choosing the right Incoterm is important because it determines the responsibilities, costs, and risks that a buyer and seller face. A wrong one can lead to confusion, higher costs, and possible disputes. To avoid such conflicts, you need to understand the Incoterm, reach out to experts for guidance, and stay up to date with marketing changes. Naming destinations, it's a common mistake to not clearly mention the point of delivery. Refer back to that previous map if you need, which leads to misunderstanding and again additional costs. To avoid such conditions, precise with the location, vary it with the parties, and include the detailed address. Terminal handling charges. Terminal handling charges are important in international shipping, but it's not usually clearly mentioned which party will bear these charges. To avoid them, parties should communicate clearly about their responsibilities in the division. Clarifying the customs responsibilities. One or both parties' customs are not always clear, leading to delays in fines and additional costs. Need to be clarified before. And ensuring the payment alignment with the Incoterm. So if the payment terms don't align with the Incoterm, it might cause cash flow issues, confusion, and financial strain. Avoid such conditions. Again, clearly mention the payment terms and use secure payment methods to secure it. You might understand my pet peeves are extra costs and delays. These are the big things that I think inhibit so many people from their international trade. They get things wrong, cost them extra money, and it causes delays. And that's what the biggest thing that so many people then get back out of the market for. So you're going to see there, obviously, all of the different areas. Under an Ex Works term, your buyer will take all of the responsibility. So you as the shipper will have your cargo ready, packed, but you are also still responsible for getting your documentation ready. FCA, you're going to deliver it to a nominated place. FOB, you're going to deliver it to the port. CFR, you're responsible for getting and assuming the costs to get the cargo from your door to the port of the destination. CIF, you're going to include insurance in there. So if you see there, the different terms obviously determine who is responsible for costs and who is responsible for the liability of the cargo. DDU, DAP, that will take you through to the door of the destination of your customer. And again, DDP, this is where we said you would then take on the import duty and GST. I would always recommend against doing DDP terms if you can avoid it, because I don't think it's necessary for the Indian manufacturer to take on that import GST thing that's also going to apply. So take your terms back to DDU or DAP. You can arrange to deliver it through to the door to protect your information if you want, but don't assume the duty and the GST if you need. There is a lot to go through as far as Incoterms are concerned and understanding the distinction between each one. And it's an area that can cause some major advantages and disadvantages for each one. It really will come down to determining how much you want to take the responsibility for as the exporter, how much liability you're willing to assume, and how much you want to pass on to it. In some instances, you may find that your buyer will tell you what it is that they're prepared to deal with, and in which case you'll be guided by such from there. The most common one that we see is an FOB or an ex works term. That will be the fact that you'll prepare your part, you'll either deliver it to a nominated port or you'll just get your cargo ready and your buyer will take responsibility of everything from there. But there are various options for you to be able to go through, and it's really going to come down to how much skill and capabilities you've got within your own organization as to how much responsibility you want to bear. The most important thing as far as Incoterms is concerned, be very clear about them. Make sure that everybody is aware of their responsibilities and check on that insurance side of things, because you need to know whether you're responsible for the insurance and where your responsibility starts and where your responsibility ends. They are the key things that I think are important as far as Incoterms are concerned, and the bits that tend to really end up causing issues for buyers and sellers. Next slide, please. Marine insurance. Any kind of insurance is frustrating for anybody, I can imagine. It's an additional cost, and in many instances, you will have insurance and you may find that there is no issue for it. The difficulty is when things go wrong, they go wrong and they cost a lot of money. So you need to make sure that you are identifying who is responsible for taking the marine insurance out on your cargo. You've put a lot of work into manufacturing your cargo. It's very valuable to you. You've done a lot of work. You've found the buyer. You've created this market opportunity. The last thing you want to do is find something go wrong with it. Always make sure you know who it is that's responsible for taking on the marine insurance. Besides damage to the product that can happen for any number of different reasons, there is one other side of things that a lot of people don't understand, and that is your cargo is not automatically insured when you put it onto a boat or a plane. Your freight forwarder will only take insurance out if you tell them to take insurance out. So make sure, again, you determine who's responsible for doing this. There is one very big thing that I will talk to you about, and that's the law of general average. And many people aren't aware of this, but essentially the law of general average states that if you have cargo and it's on a boat and something happens to that boat, and if you think of, you may have seen the Maersk vessel that crashed into the Baltimore Bridge and knocked the bridge down, a lot of people. So the captain of that vessel declared general average. What that meant is the people that had cargo on that boat were then partly responsible for the salvage of that vessel. This is where if you have marine insurance, they will cover you for the law of general average. If you don't have marine insurance, your cargo will be held until such time that the buyer or the seller gives the percentage of the money for it. Again, marine insurance, really important for you to consider. Normally, the best thing to do is to cost plus 10%, and make sure that you've covered in the cost of the freight and the cost of any other transport methods in there as well. So if we can move to the next slide, please. Warehouse and distribution for your product. Really, there's a lot of different options available for you as far as warehousing is concerned in Australia. And this is essentially just where it is that you're going to be making sure that your product gets off to your customer. Look at the key areas of where it is that you've decided that your biggest market opportunities are concerned, and look for warehouse opportunities in those areas. Complete Global Solutions, for example, we don't own our own warehouse. We outsource to multiple different ones. And that's because of the fact that we have clients with a wide variety of cargoes. So we might have somebody who is perishable goods, need a reefer solution. They might have hazardous goods. They might be a bulk chemical or pigment one where we don't want that going into the same warehouse area as, say, for example, a food product. It might be an e-commerce solution where we need to offer a direct 3PL solution so we can pick and pack and send off to your ultimate direct buyers from there. The best thing for you to do is to have a look at where it is that you think your market distribution is going to be going and how it is that this warehouse solution and distribution solution can help scale up your business from there. What are the opportunities for you? How is it going to be able to help you grow more? And where is it that you think that you want to have your main distribution servicing from? There's a lot of things that you would see these days if you want to go into Amazon or if you want to go into any of the large hardware stores and all the rest of it. They will have particular requirements that you need to meet with regards to repacking and all the rest of it from there. You might want to send a bulk load of products through to Australia and then have it stored in a warehouse and then have somebody in the warehouse pick and pack individual items to meet the needs of the stores that you're going to. All of these opportunities are available to you. You really just need to decide how it is that you want to scale your product from there. Next slide, please. Key benefits again of outsourcing to a 3PL. This is essentially just giving yourself as many different solutions as you possibly can. Cost savings, time efficiency, expertise, faster shipping. Outsourcing to companies like us can just give you, reduce your headaches, get your product out to the market a lot faster, and you can go from there. Next slide, please. Here we're going to have a look at what some of the solutions are for Indian importers and exporters. And these are, and I mean, you're going to know so many of these already, the key imports and exports that we're looking at the moment in Australia, market entry strategies, marketing your product in Australia, and best product practice and common mistakes that we see a lot of people making from our time in the industry. So if we can go to the next slide, please. Top products that are going out from India that we're seeing at the moment. Agricultural products. One of the biggest exporters coming in through at the moment. If you choose to export Indian agricultural products to Australia, you can tap into a growing sector with like great opportunities. I think they said in 2021 and 2022, Australia imported $577 million worth of agricultural products from India. And the key products were rice, bread, pastry, coffee, and tea. So there's some really good opportunities and there's some really good market receptive elements there. Pharmaceutical and healthcare products. Indian manufacturers are fantastic at these products at the moment, and the Australian marketplace is really receptive to the quality of the products that are coming from the Indian manufacturers. They produce high quality, affordable pharmaceutical products. Healthcare providers and consumers in Australia rely on Indian pharmaceutical and healthcare products. And Australia accounted for about 1.63% of India's outbound pharmaceutical shipments. And I think you're going to see that's going to increase significantly. Between April and November 2023, drugs and pharmaceuticals India exported to Australia was about $305 million. And the most common products exported to Australia include active pharmaceutical ingredients, generic medicines, and over-the-counter healthcare products. We've seen some fantastic products coming through. We have a healthcare importer. They were doing hair dyes that were coming through, but these were sustainable products and they were done in just the most fantastic way. Diamonds and other jewelry, Indian diamonds and other pieces of jewelry found special place in the Australian marketplace. And India, I didn't realize, exported $211 million worth of diamonds to Australia in 2022. Textiles and apparel, everybody would be aware. The Indian quality of textiles at the moment is fantastic. They're known for their diversity and high quality. Contemporary fashion, traditional garments, all very popular here in Australia. $604 million worth of textiles in 2022. Opportunities are huge. Import requirements are really good. Duty-free status, really good opportunities to really get into the market as far as that's concerned, particularly given the maturity of the market coming through from India. Food products, enormous potential here in Australia for food products, not just because there is an enormous multinational lifestyle going in Australia and a really big Indian population here in Australia as well, but a really receptive Australian population to Indian food products, again, because of the quality, the rich taste, the diverse flavours of Indian food products, and they're catering to the multicultural palate here in Australia. Leather products. The Indian manufacturers are doing some fantastic leather products, automobile components. The list is endless. There's a huge amount of different things, handicrafts and home decor. In those areas, again, go back into the legislation and the requirements that govern a lot of those plant products and all the rest of it. Electronic goods. This is really somewhere that the Indian manufacturers are doing fantastic at the moment. Manufacturing equipment. Because the Indian government is having such a big push on Indian manufacturing, they want products to be made in India and they want them to be sent out to the world. This is a fantastic time for Indian manufacturers to really make the most of the government support that's going through both in India and then the trade implications as far as Australia is concerned as well. They've already got a strong relationship with Indian exporters, exporting a variety of products into the Australian market. Textiles and garments, agricultural products, pharmaceuticals, jewelry, automobile components, information technology and services, home decor and furnishing, renewable energy solutions. There's a lot of fantastic educational services and all the rest of it going between Australia and India at the moment. A lot of the universities in Australia are actually opening up areas over in India, and it's increasing the opportunities as far as the education market is going as well. You're going to find an increase in service levels between the two countries as well. India's top imports from Australia, unfortunately, we're still talking a lot about the mineral fuels. There's going to be a really big push that's going through between the renewable energy sector, between Australia and India on both sectors. Our critical minerals, your guys push into renewable energy. There's going to be an enormous sector happening between the sustainable area, renewable energy, and all of the opportunities that are opening up between there, particularly, again, as we say, as many businesses and countries try and diversify away from China, this is where you find that the Indian market is just going to excel. I'm sure there'll be lots of questions about opportunities that go through from there. So I'm just going to keep on moving through. And then if anybody's got anything extra to add, next slide, please. We're looking at market entry strategies here. So obviously this is how you're actually going to get your product into the Australian market. So the thing for you is you can have an agent here in Australia, you can have a broker, you can work with a wholesaler who can be an individual or a company. They're going to actually purchase the product from you guys and they're going to sell it off to people from there. You can have your own distributor, you can go into a joint venture with an Australian company, or you can just work directly online to get your product out into the Australian marketplace. There's a really big amount of different ways and multi-channels for you to be able to get your product in there. You can actually just go from your side in India to find buyers there into Australia, or you can actually find an agent in Australia that can work on your behalf to be able to find opportunities for you. Again, because there's such a big push between the Australian and the Indian governments to increase the trade, this is where you find things like a lot of trade shows. There's a lot of organisations that are actively working between supporting Indian businesses. They're taking buyers from Australia across to India, and they're doing the same in obviously having Indian sellers come to Australia in order to be able to increase the trade opportunities as far as those things are concerned. So essentially, from your perspective, again, it's going to be looking at the maturity of your business itself as to how it is that you think that you can make it into the market. Again, remember your big key things are making sure that you're compliant with the Australian legislation. So if you don't feel that you have the capabilities within your own organisation to begin with, you might be better off to go and have a look at an agent or a broker in Australia to be able to help you move through those. If you do have those capabilities, you might just go into a distributor or into an online distributor arrangement. It will come down to the capabilities within your own market and your own business as to how it is that you think that you can get through faster. Next slide, please. Marketing your product in Australia. There's obviously, as far as market demands, consumer preferences, and cultural nuances vary greatly between India and Australia. And if you lack the proper understanding of these concepts, it can result in some poor marketing strategies. You may lose valuable customer engagement. And before you engage in India-Australia export trade, conduct some proper market research, and it's going to help you tailor your marketing strategies to match the preferences of the Australian consumers. The growth of the Indian exports to Australia has resulted from the complementary nature of both nations' economies, and the demand for diverse products has increased in the Australian market. Enormous Indian community in Australia, which is essential in improving and in strengthening the trade relations between the two nations. And we're home to a large community of Indian students and professionals, and that's why there's a constant demand for Indian products and services in Australia. This is a really good connection for you to be able to start your bridge into exporting into Australia. It creates economic and cultural connections that are beneficial for Indian exporters. And you can leverage this network to increase the visibility and acceptance of your products in Australia. It's also going to open up some new opportunities and collaborations, and you can leverage these to expand your presence from there. Your budget's going to determine how much it is that you're going to spend. And it's really going to come down to, as we said, your previous market entry strategy as to whether how much you're going to be involved in the marketing of your product in Australia. In some instances, we do find that the seller has got such a vested interest in the quality and the nature of their product that they will govern the Australian buyer as to how it is that they want them to market their product, what price range they want them to sell it at. All of this is going to be things that you can discuss between your people. New technologies and trends, innovations happening between our two areas. There's really good opportunities to be able to market and to expand the reach of your product, particularly into the Australian marketplace. Excellently, also, you can replicate a lot of these strategies if you're dealing into the US market or to some of those other markets as well, where you want to get your expansion as well. Next slide, please. Best practice to consider: speed versus cost. Find the right balance between the delivery speed and the cost, depending upon the urgency and the budget, and then prioritize either express or shipping options. Parcel weight and size. Familiarize yourself with carrier regulations and pricing strategies. The last thing you want to be doing is paying for empty weight on your product. Get the packaging right, because that's obviously going to be able to maximize the landed cost that you're able to do. Insurance and tracking, valuable assurance. Obviously, make sure we've talked about insurance already. Properly sized packaging, as I covered from there. Material suitability. The last thing you want to do is obviously pack your product poorly and then find that it gets to its destination damaged or in not the condition that you created in. You've spent a lot of time creating this product. Make sure it's packed properly. Economic efficiency, reduce your overpacking to cut down on the materials and the shipping costs. Select eco-friendly packaging to boost your corporate responsibility and attract environmentally conscious consumers, because again, that's going to increase your market opportunities. Make sure your documents are right. Correctly complete your international shipping documents. Duty and tax compliance, be aware of your obligations for the different countries. Restricted items compliance, as we said. Packaging and labeling compliance, regulation updates, and obviously making sure that you foster your customer trust. These are the big things that you want to do because you want to make sure that you're actually in this market for a long time. You want to make sure that you're actually in because, again, as we said at the beginning, the more accurate you make sure that you are doing your jobs, the more compliant you are, the better you are received by the Australian importers, and the more they will buy your products. There are so many different sellers out there that do not pay attention to what's required for the Australian market. They don't get bought from. Make sure you get it done properly because I cannot stress to you enough, it's going to increase your opportunities like you would not believe. Next slide, please. Common mistakes to not look that people are making, they're not checking their market access, they're not doing their research before they actually look to see whether their product is viable in the market or not. They don't have the right documentation before shipping. They're using the wrong HS code, so they're not getting those duty-free status. They're misdeclaring their goods or their product value. You might decide to try and have a low product value in order to reduce your GST or anything like that. You will get found out eventually. It will cause you issues with insurance. It will cause you issues on all of them, and you'll get a black mark against your name. Incorrect delivery address details. Make sure you know where your customer is and how they can receive their goods because that will affect your landed cost. Using the wrong Incoterms, not understanding the obligations under the terms or assuming that the buyer does, not understanding the duties or the taxes. Again, this is where we say the landed cost is really important for you because that's going to give you an idea of how much your product can sell for here in the Australian market. Incorrectly packaging your shipments and damaging your goods. Your buyer under your Incoterms might be responsible for the insurance or anything, but if you poorly package your product and it gets damaged, again, if that happens too many times, your buyer is going to walk away and find somebody else. There is a big market out there. The opportunities are huge. Failing to check your transit times, not letting your customer know how long it's going to be for a realistic shipping from there, unrealistic expectations on how long the process or the shipment takes, using the cheapest shipping option available. Again, ship as per the nature of your product. If you go for the cheapest one, you might find that you'll have issues as far as that's concerned. Not complying with domestic and international laws, and you need to provide compliance with those standards. Again, make sure you do it right the first time because I cannot stress to you enough, the more accurate you make your processes, the Australian market will love you. They will love you and they will love your products because we already love the Indian products. We know that the quality is great. But what's lacked before is a lack of compliance with regards to the documentation processes. If you get that right and you spend a bit of time to learn what you need to do, you really will find the Australian buyers will be far more receptive to your opportunities. Next slide, please. There is in October, just starting, Australia will begin to offer up to 1,000 work and holiday visas each year to Indian citizens under our free trade agreement. So this is some really good opportunities for you to be able to come over before where there were visas that were required. 1 year visa to work, study and travel across Australia. Again, this gives a lot of people the opportunity to be able to go through and have a look at new opportunities. Australian universities are really excited about a lot of people coming over from here. Abundant critical minerals, this is what I was saying to you, low emission technologies, you would see it in India yourself, and I know in Australia. We've all signed up to the Paris Agreement. India, I believe, has committed to be net zero by 2070, 2060 or 2070. Australia, we've said net zero by 2050, which means we have got a massive push on renewable energy. This is going to be huge opportunities as far as our two countries are concerned, and you're going to find that there will be a lot going through with increases of trade in those particular areas. Indian High Commission continues to be the second largest source country for international student enrolments in Australia. Again, our universities are fantastic, and I know Indian ones as well, and I know that there's opportunities that are happening between Australian universities and Indian sister relationships at the moment to include those. And we've already covered over, obviously, what the key products are that we're looking at the moment between our two countries, and we can go into more of that if you need. Next slide, please. before we get into any questions from you, this is essentially just some of the questions that we always get asked. How many cubic meters can I fit into a shipping container? And again, this is because a lot of these things are going to come down and apply to your landed cost. This is how much it is that your product can be sold for in Australia. And you want to know that as early as you possibly can, because that's going to lead to your discussions with your buyers. So the 20-foot general purpose container, as we say, has got a volume of 33 cubic meters and will hold about 27 to 28 cubic meters of cargo. A 40-foot will take about 55 to 60, and a 40-foot high cube about 65 to 70 cubic meters of cargo, depending upon the packing. Again, landed costing, the biggest thing. This is huge as far as I'm concerned, and it's one of the biggest poets that you need to ascertain right from the very beginning. Have a look at what it costs you to manufacture your product. Have a look at what it costs you to ship your product, including any duty and GST on the other side, so you know what it is that the Australian buyer can sell the product for on the other side once they add on their own margin. What documents do I need for importing? We've already covered a lot of these right from the very beginning, but again, this is a really big question that a lot of people ask a lot, just what documents that they need to do. And there will be some, as we said, that will be pertinent to the nature of the commodity that you have. Why do I need a packing declaration for sea freight to Australia? This is probably the document that trips up most exporters. They don't get it right. They don't complete it properly. They leave off information that's important. If you do not do a packing declaration for your sea freight consignment, it will be stopped at the border, it will be inspected, and you will get additional costs. We want to avoid extra costs at every opportunity. The worst thing that you can do is work on your landed costing and then not get something right and end up with a whole bunch of additional costs that you can't expect and that your buyer didn't expect either. So it's really important to do it. A packing declaration isn't required for an air freight consignment, but it is required for a sea freight consignment. And we can send you templates of those with including checklists that will give you a bit of guidance on how to complete those if you're at that stage of needing to do that. Get that part right, because again, additional costs. Volumetric charge for air freight. Some of you may know this. Obviously, your air freight is charged on the greater of either your weight or your measure. If you think about the difference between sending a bag full of pillows and a bag full of bricks, and there will be conversions that will particularly apply for your length, breadth, your weight, and then times that by 167 will give you your chargeable volume. So your chargeable volume for a mattress will be bigger than the actual weight, and you'll be charged on the per kilo of that volume. Don't try and misdeclare it. The airline will check and you'll go from there. Next slide, please. This was essentially where we were sort of saying if anybody had any specific questions that they wanted to ask, we're more than happy to. I know that whether everything that we have said, we've covered a lot of stuff. If people have questions now, we're happy to answer them. If people have questions that they want to email through afterwards, they're more than welcome to contact Rodney or I. Again, Colin not here tonight, but he can also answer your questions as well. And you can contact us and we can help you answer any specific commodity queries or market queries. A lot of the time, things will be specific to the nature of the product that you're dealing with. And we can't cover every product in this presentation. So we've included some sort of handy sites and all the rest of it in there for you. But if anybody's got any specific questions that they wanted to ask, either Rodney or I can help try and answer them now for you, or we can come back to you at a later time.
Thank you, Vanessa. So it was a great presentation and full of information. It's really nice. Thank you very much. Okay, so now just would like to request everyone, अगर आप लोगों के पास कोई भी क्वेरी है, कुछ भी क्वेश्चंस है, एंड इफ यू रियली वांट टू आस्क एनीथिंग, अगर आपको लगता है कुछ इन्फॉर्मेशन चाहिए तो आप डेफिनेटली अभी पूछ सकते हैं. एनी काइंड ऑफ क्वेश्चंस आप चैट बॉक्स में भी डाल सकते हैं, एंड इफ यू वांट टू हैव डायरेक्टली टॉक तो आप अनम्यूट करके भी अपने आप को बोल सकते हैं. एनी क्वेश्चंस फ्रॉम एनीवन?
to get the HS codes. So what I will do is, let me see if I can do this while I'm still on the call. Let me see first
Okay,
of all.
so we have got one question from Mr. Kirit Prajapati. He just would like to ask that what kind of the products he's dealing in. So he just want to ask that what kind of his kind of the products would be appropriate in Australia or not. So I just would like to request Kirit Prajapati. Yeah. You can unmute yourself and you can ask definitely for sure.
Hello, ma'am. How are you? I'm
Good,
Kirit
thank you.
here. Yeah, actually, I'm dealing with the clay products, which is the clay and tandoor products. And how
Mhm.
about the demand about in Australia about the tandoor products? I know the tandoor products are used in restaurant and individual also, which is used
Mhm.
for the uh, exactly
To making
my.
breads or to making you can say dumplings.
I hope you understand, ma'am. And I have a products which is the clay products which is used in our kitchen,
Mhm.
which is yeah. So how about the markets and how can I approach to the Australia buyers and how can I capture the market on a right way? Because I have the very good products, very natural and very strong and very good for the health.
Mm.
I can say that the in a short statement, without anything change, you can make a better health with the use of these products, and there is no lifestyle change and you get the very good health benefits with the use of these products. So
Mm.
can I have information regarding this, please, ma'am?
The big thing that I would say with regards to be careful about mentioning the health benefits of your product,
Okay.
because there will be requirements our side with therapeutic goods and all the rest of it that will say you need to be careful about what it is that you say, particularly on the health side.
Okay.
So your product benefits might be um, talking about the fact that it's natural, talking about the fact that it's strong, talking about
Ye-
the fact that you don't use any chemicals when you
yeah.
manufacture it. So there's nothing coming out of your product that
Yeah.
could be harmful for either the environment. So yours is something that you're going to be talking about. And this is where you see really good opportunities coming through in Australia, because particularly coming out of COVID and all the rest of it, where so many people were concerned about the chemicals and everything like that that had been
Yeah.
going through. Um, you're going to be talking about, you're going to be appealing to families, you're going to be appealing to restaurants, you're going to be appealing to um, the natural. And um, we actually deal with a lot of health company distributors. So essentially, they deal through to um, health food stores, but there's also a big cooking component going through in a lot of different wholesalers to restaurants and everything as well, but
Okay.
also through into some of the supermarkets as well. So your opportunities are actually quite good, particularly as you start to talk about, again, avoid those real specific health words. Just purely you would see it if you did it to America or something like that. As soon as you start to say that you have actually got health benefits,
Yeah.
sometimes you might get picked up on those. So
Okay.
take it around and talk about the natural, the non-chemicals coming out,
Okay.
and how much better those kind of effects are going to be. Your marketing strategy is going to be really perhaps maybe looking at things like videos. It's going to be looking at things like YouTube videos and some of those kind of things as well, because you actually want to show the strength of your product. You want
Yes.
to show how your product is used, and you
Yes.
want to obviously talk about um, the natural element of that. So your
True.
marketing strategy is going to be really quite visual as far as those side of things is concerned. That would be my advice on
Okay.
that side of things. And I think that would make your product quite receptive in Australia, because Australian, um, we're an island, we're surrounded by nature and all the rest of it. And I think
True.
you would see it already yourself. So many people are more concerned about natural and healthy and all of those things now, particularly when you come out of a COVID and a pandemic environment. People
Yeah.
are so concerned about making sure that they're using natural products and all the rest of it. Still be careful about your price range, because we're still at that area where some people will be prepared to pay a much higher price for a product that is got all of those benefits. But it really depends upon how far you want to expand out.
Okay.
I hope that has given you a couple
Yeah.
of ideas.
Yeah, absolutely.
Happy to work through some other stuff with you, sort of separate, if you have some other things. And if I find anything, I can always send it through to the guys over there. That might help you a bit more about some different opportunities that we see. But yeah, great opportunities. Really the kind of product that people are looking for in Australia.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Thanks. Nice to have you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so now the next question is from Nishant Goyal, and he's asking that what are the specific Australian compliances or certificates for wooden articles or handicrafts?
Okay, so with wooden articrafts, handicrafts and articles, what you need to do is you need to actually have them treated. So they need to be fumigated prior to coming into Australia. And so that's got to be done with methyl bromide, and you'll need to produce a fumigation certificate with those products. So there's the fumigation that might be required for packaging or something like that. But with regards to timber products, you must have a fumigation certificate. If you send products through to Australia and they are timber and they haven't been fumigated, they won't be allowed into the country. They'll either be destroyed or they'll be re-exported. So fumigation is your big key for that. You've put a lot of work into your handicrafts. You've done a lot of work into, obviously, your timber products. They're going to be very valuable for you. The last thing you want to do is ship them all the way to Australia with high shipping costs and then end up not being able to get into the country. Fumigation is your key.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so now there is one more question from Mehul Galiawala, and he's asking that how do we get buyers' data from the Australia? And he's asking for the specific HS code, which is 620459. So, what are the keys? What are the ways to get the buyer's data from the Australia?
That is difficult because in a lot of instances, I'd have to check that. What was the HS code you said?
620459. It's basically a fabric, or the you can say the garments.
Okay.
Fabric. Yeah.
So again, what you're going to be looking for there is we're going to be trying to ascertain, because textiles is obviously such a broad thing. If you want to have a look at where your buyers are, what we would need to do is we would need to break it down into the genre of the textiles. So if you're talking about tablecloths, sheets, and all the rest of it, you're going to be looking at companies like Spotlight. You're going to be looking at companies like Target or Kmart or all of those kind of areas. You're going to be looking at some of those kind of small local stores. If you're looking at clothing and that's your textile side of things, then we're going to be looking at so much of a different kind of area. And some of those will correlate and will cross-reference. Others we're going to need to get down to a little bit more specific as to the nature of the product that you're bringing in. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And just I would like to add into the question that what is a normal routine? What is a normal market entry strategy for specifically for textile or like a fabric or the apparels? I mean, most of the time it's going through the agents or the stores, or these people are going to directly buy from the exporters. How it goes? I mean, it's an importer distributor. Then a retailer or directly agent more working on this product?
Well, I think the opportunities there is because as far as what we see in Australia is that there is a huge amount of Indian textile manufacturers. So in order to be able to get your product through to the people who are buying in Australia, because obviously we've got a much smaller buying market here in Australia, what we need to start doing is drilling down into directly the specific areas that you're looking for. So you might go and have a look at a buying agent here in Australia who would be able to go and represent your products off to somebody else. You might go and send samples through to the companies in order to be able to find some additional opportunities to get your product out there. It's really going to come down to using some of the networks between the two countries, whether you've actually got trade opportunities between the two, working through the India and Australia Trade Council to have a look at the opportunities from there, because they will actually do buying things specifically relating to the nature of the product that you're looking for. So we can send lists, and if you can use your Google, and you can Google buyers of Australia, of Indian textiles, you will get a list, but actually getting into those products and those markets tends to be a little bit more difficult. So this is where you would look to work with an agent or a wholesaler here in Australia to be able to get your product in there more readily and faster, because otherwise that's a lot of work for you to do yourself.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Okay, so we are having one more question from Prerna. So yeah, just I would like to request Prerna, unmute yourself and ask Vanessa. I just would like to add one more thing about Prerna. She is, a very young, dynamic, and very enthusiastic lady about to start the export business. And just recently, I mean, it has been just 4 to 5 months she has learned the things, and but very hardworking, very dedicated about to start the export business. And within very short span, she has developed her company, the products, brands, packaging, everything.
Thank
So
you.
yeah, Prerna, yeah, please ask your question.
Yeah, so my product, Vanessa, is ready to eat food products. And I have a couple of questions. One, whether the Australian market is open to Indian ready to eat food products. And they are also gluten-free, organic, and all those categories are there. And how do we get in touch with retail food stores so that we can start supplying in Australia? Or is there a broker? What is the system in Australia which is in place? Like in India, if you want to get into any retail stores, you need a strong connection with your distributors. So in Australia, if we want to get into food chain, what is the best way to do that?
Yeah. And I think from your perspective, first and foremost, yes, there is a market for ready to eat products here in Australia. You would see it in so many of the other areas that you're dealing with at the moment. Convenience, taste, quality, all of those things are working into your advantage. Obviously, there will be things that will work against your advantage, and that would be the costs associated with shipping those products to Australia. And this is where you will find that it would be slightly difficult for you in the nature of that product, because if we look at a lot of the ready-to-eat packages that are being sold in, say, our large supermarkets and all the rest of it at the moment, so they might be being sold in the freezer section, or they might be being sold in the cooler section. And they would be retailing in Australia for between $10 to $20 per dish. So this is where your landed costing is going to become really important for you, because I can give you can work on distribution networks and all the rest of it, and you can work it through, but you're going to have to work on your landed costing first to see whether you can fit into those parameters. Because if you want to get into the large supermarkets, their margins that they give to the sellers are much smaller.
Right.
So you find that your product has to get so much further back in order to be able to meet that market that's in at the moment. Now, there is a fairly big market that's in there at the moment. There is, in the ready-to-eat side of things, there is health ones, there is weight loss ones, there is natural ones. There's companies in Australia who are actually manufacturing it and producing it here in Australia and going from there. really good demand. So excellent demand, tricky price point. So that's the big thing that I would say to you, is that you're just going to need to check first to see how it is that you're going to ship your cargo, because obviously you're going to be refrigerated needs and all the rest of it. How it is that you're going to look to get your product to the marketplace, and what your manufacturing costs are, factoring in those quite high things. As far as food products in Australia, you're going to have to be really careful with your labeling. And you're obviously, this is where you need to get into your lot codes, checking on things like your dairy and all of those other things. Be really specific with your ingredients, because imported foods in Australia will really be checking through so many of the things that you're dealing with. And what you don't want to do is find that you've got some products in there which might cause you a problem, but then to take them out will reduce the quality of what it is that you're doing. So yeah, on those kind of things. As far as then getting through your bit, then where you say, righto, I've checked my landed costing, I've checked my products are okay, I've checked that I can comply with the food requirement labeling for Australia and all the rest of it. The distribution and all the rest of it from there is, this is where you'd be going through to providing samples. It would almost require either you being here and dealing with the people here in Australia yourself so you can sell your product, or it would be the nature of the product. You would need an agent to help get you through into the key places to sell your product. And once you get in there, your ability to be able to continue will be better. The Australian supermarkets are a bit brutal. It can be quite tricky to obviously keep a consistent supply. So that's the big thing that you need to do, because if for some reason your supply falls down, you will lose your shelf space. And that's going to be the big area for you. There are areas where you might find that a lot of companies in Australia are doing ready to eat meals, and they might be doing it under a particular genre or quality. You might be able to distribute to them, and they then change your branding and put their own branding on, and then sell their product out from there. So say, for example, there might be a company called Light and Easy. Light and Easy does sort of natural weight lossy kind of products and all the rest of it in a ready to package meal. Really good distribution here in Australia, but they would buy from you, they would repackage under their own brand, and then they would sell out from there. But again, you're going to come down to obviously needing to meet that initial landed costing and that consistency of supply.
Yeah, so it's possible to, what I want to understand is, if I have to go through an agent, how do we know that this is a trustworthy agent? How do we find or crack this situation?
Yeah, and on that kind of thing, what I would need to do is I would need to do a bit of research for you on that specific product, and I'm quite happy to do that, to go and have a look and see if I can find some people through our networks that are dealing in that specific thing for you, because I completely agree. The last thing that you want to do is get in and get with somebody who is actually going to misrepresent your product or not do it in the manner that you want your product to be displayed at, or perhaps maybe undersell the quality of your product, because you know what your product's worth and you know the product value. So you want to make sure that whoever's representing you here in Australia is obviously articulating that to everybody as well. Specifically off the top of my head, I could not tell you who those agents are, but I'm more than happy to do some research for you. So while you do some work on your landed costing and all the rest of it, I'll have a look and see if I can get an idea through my networks of who some good agents would be that would be able to really sell your product and market it out from there.
Super. Thank you so much. Thank you.
That's okay. Congratulations. It's a really good, again, when we were talking to the other gentleman, those kind of natural products and that health and all the rest of it. And no, it's a really good time for you to be doing those kind of products. And I think they would be widely received.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Vanessa. And we're having one more question from Nihar Moradia. He's asking that I'm looking for renewable products, especially since I'm working on the product pipeline now. I want to know more about both the import and export side of Australia's perspective around renewable products with India. So, Nihar, just if you can unmute yourself and you can ask also what kind of renewable products you are talking about. निहार अगर आप एग्जैक्टली कुछ मोर ज्यादा थोड़ा बहुत और बताना चाहेंगे रिन्यूएबल प्रोडक्ट्स के बारे में या जस्ट वुड लाइक टू हैव द आंसर ओनली अबाउट दिस ओके ओके एक सेकेंड okay about the solar so Vanessa he would like to know about the specifically solar and gases renewable green gases and every those kind of the products renewable energy kind of the products
And huge, actually. And you would find it. So, say, for example, at the moment, we've just been working on 2 really large solar plant projects from China. One of them's 900 containers worth of solar panels and battery. The next one is 100 containers worth of. The push in Australia at the moment, and you would see it in India as well, the push towards renewable energy is enormous. And I think from an Indian perspective, you guys would also find that a lot of different countries at the moment are trying to put increased tariffs onto Chinese products because they've had that massive control of the market so far. So then a lot of countries are then looking to India, saying, how can we help you increase your trade in this kind of area in order to be able to help us meet our renewable energy targets? From Australia, we're going to be, because we're not doing, I think we might have maybe 1 or 2 manufacturers of solar panels here in Australia at the moment. I think our big thing is going to be critical minerals, which will be going through to places like India and the other areas in order to be able to generate those renewable energy equipment. Solar panels, enormous. The amount of work that's being done at the moment to create where we need to be as far as our net zero commitments. And I think from Australia's perspective, we will be putting through our 2035 targets next year. And this is where we'll be as part of the Paris Agreement. And this is where you will see that we will be increasing our hit against renewable energy. So we will be saying we need to increase our wind, increase our solar. Now we're talking about solar from a rooftop solar perspective to try and encourage more households to get the rooftop solar and the batteries, but also then the large, huge solar farms and the projects that have been dealing with all across Australia. We have a lot of land. We have got a lot of sun. We have a lot of opportunities to be able to increase our use in those areas. Hydrogen is the other area that you're finding, and obviously the green hydrogen requirements and all the rest of it that are coming through at the moment. There's been a few people that have been pulling away a little bit from the hydrogen side of things, but I think that you'll find across the next sort of maybe 6 months that a few projects of that will start back up again. At the moment, the push will be specifically for both solar and wind. In order to be able to meet our Paris Agreement targets, we really only have renewable energy, because I think there was discussion about not pushing renewable energy and going towards nuclear or something, but we have no nuclear plants in Australia. We don't have the capacity to be able to build those nuclear plants and all the rest of it. Our only way at the moment to do it is either through renewable energy, hydrogen, gas. Our country has committed to keeping LNG within our marketplace for, I think, at least another 10 or 15 years, I believe. They've said that gas will be part of our energy equation until 2040. But there will be there is a very big push for renewable energy. I went to a renewable energy conference recently in Brisbane, and there was actually quite a large Indian contingent there. a bigger Chinese contingent, which has always been the way. But I think that you will see that that will really start to move a lot more towards India. And it should move a lot more to India before it moves to perhaps maybe Vietnam or some of those other areas, which will be the other markets that countries will look to as they try and move a little bit away from the Chinese market. So really good time for you if you're dealing in those side of things. Not quite so much on the export of solar panels from Australia to India, just purely because our manufacturing area in that side of things is not very big at the moment. Ours will be on the critical minerals that the renewable energy people need in order to be able to create them.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Vanessa. It was very insightful, and you are having a very good projection. I mean, it seems like you are very much, indirectly you are representing the Australian government as well. You are talking about 2035, 2040 projections and everything. So it's really nice. Okay.
I think that it's going to be legislated so much soon, the renewable energy sector. And I think I sat in a thing with the Olympic Games the other day, and it was Paris, LA, and Brisbane, because we'll have the Olympics here in 2032. And
Okay.
essentially they said, change or be changed. So you're going to find that the legislation is going to come through as far as these sustainable products, these healthy, these quality, these all of the rest of it's going to come through. If the Indian market is positioning themselves in that, it's future facing. That's where you guys want to be. You want to be in the market for a long time. The opportunities are there. The products, the older products that a lot of the Indian manufacturing had relied upon before, there is still a market for that, but there is a really big opportunities for future-facing Indian companies who are focusing on the quality, who are focusing on their processes and their systems, who are aligning themselves in with the right partners, and who are concentrating on making sure that their processes are right. I think you will find the Australian buyers will be very receptive to you.
Okay. Okay, we are having one more question from Chintan Kapadia. Okay, I just would like to take the opportunity here to congratulate Mr. Chintan Kapadia, and yes, Mr. Hitesh Gangani is also with him, and Mr. Laljibai Kataria. Just Vanessa, I would like to let you know that Hitesh Gangani and Laljibai Kataria, they have exported 50 containers last month. So
Wow.
yeah, in their just within last 6 to 7 months of time, they have learned the things and they are freshly entered into the export import business. But within just 6 to 7 months of the time, they have exported 52 containers. So that is really appreciable. Congratulations, Chintan bhai, Hitesh bhai, Lalji bhai. Yeah. So there is a question from him, from Hitesh bhai, that can Vanessa can provide international agent of peanut and rice? Do you have any approach or do you have any contact for the international agent of peanut and rice?
So do you mean an agent here in Australia in order to be able to sell those products for you?
Yes, or
Yeah.
not only in Australia, but I mean for international market, any market.
Any market.
Yeah.
I think it's difficult when you get into the peanut and the rice side of things because there's some quite strict legislative requirements on those products in different regions. So they're the only things that you need to find a buying agent would actually have the capacity to be able to cover all of those side of things for you. And it's often difficult for us to find an agent who could cover that in every market. There will be some key commonalities between markets that you will find that one agent would be able to do. Again, it's not one that I can think of off the top of my head, but I'm certainly happy to go and have a look and reach out to our connections and see if we can find somebody who might be able to give you the widest reach based on the nature of your products. I know in Australia, peanuts coming into Australia, there's a lot of processing side of things that obviously the documentation needs to be done in a particular manner in order to be able to ascertain whether they're raw, how much manufacturing has been done on them. And that requirement can be replicated into a lot of different areas as well. So they're the only things that we would need to consider an agent that would have the capacity to be able to cover the input requirements in as many different regions as you can.
Okay, okay. Thank you very much. Okay, so basically, again, there is a repeat question from Mehul that he also would like to have some agent or a specific contact for fabric for the 620459. So if you do have any such kind of the contact, yeah, so they would like to approach. Basically, I will share contact details for Vanessa. So everybody, you can approach her for your kind of the product, and if she is going to have the contacts or anything, for agents. So the basic, what I understood is either it's about the food product, either about it's a renewable product, either it's about fabric, textile, apparel. Everybody would like to have the agent. So what is a basic, any specific platform, or is there any specific website, or how they can approach this contact agents basically?
Yeah, and again, they're going to be varied depending upon the nature of the product that you're looking at. So you're not going to find a platform where you can pick your agents as for everything. There's some places that obviously you would see marketplaces like, the Alibabas and all the rest of it of the world, where you can go onto those kind of platforms and you can actually find people from there. But they are quite broad. What you need to do, and in order to be able to, I think from my perspective, you could spend all day sending multiple inquiries off to different people in some of those markets, or you can spend a little bit of research going down and then drilling down into something that's going to be perhaps maybe more tangible and direct opportunity for you to be able to follow up for. And that's the side of things that we sort of say, do that a little bit of market research first, because you could go to a platform and that could take you months in order to be able to break through to the side of things that it is that you want to do. Get your information about your product right first. Get your selling opportunities together. Work out your unique selling differences of the nature of the product that you're dealing with. And then let's drill down further there to find out particular buyers for the nature of the product that you're dealing with. To shorten the time that you spend sending bulk emails out to people with no responses.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So I think that is all from a Q&A. Okay, so I just want to ask one question from my side, and I would like to ask to Rodney if he is interested to answer, because I want to listen him as well. He
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so Rodney, basically, in a what different conditions Australian Custom Department, they send back the cargo to the respective countries when the cargo arrives in Australia, and what are the different conditions and what the different situations that you have come across, that these were the reasons, and accordingly the custom department has raised the query, and the query was so sensitive that they can't allow the cargo go into the market. So what are the reasons that custom department, they send back the cargo to the different origin country?
Yeah, look, thanks. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's clearly audible.
So I think Vanessa's raised a lot of those, and again, it gets down to your paperwork, what you're shipping, and what the requirements there for your importing and those sort of things. So, and your product. So if it's your timber product, if you've got your certificates, your fumigation, those sorts of things, everything's packaged properly, your documentation and those sorts of things stack up, you're going to be meeting less opposition or less chance that your product's going to be held up in customs or potentially sent back in customs. So they're going to be your main things. If you stick to, as Vanessa said, you stick to those processes. If you're not sure, golden rule is ask, reach out, send an email. Let's get together and hook up on Zoom and let's have a meeting. Let's go through it and let's make sure we do our checks and balances. And that way it's going to be your best opportunity for your product to get through without any hold up of customs.
Any recent experience that you have came across, and it might be for any specific reason that the cargo has been set back?
I haven't. Vanessa, I might have to throw it to Vanessa on this one.
The things that I have seen probably most recently has been incorrect labeling of products. So I think particularly for one of your other guests, particularly in relation to food products. So they'll find that imported food here in Australia was be very specific about the labeling requirements to meet Australian standards. And you will find that if your product isn't labeled correctly, you could be told that you would need to either destroy your product or re-export it. If you have timber products that come through and you haven't got it fumigated, again, you will be destruction of goods, or you can choose to have them re-exported. Generally, the choice will come down to whether you agree to have your product destroyed or whether you want to have it returned back to your place. I've seen instances where, say, for example, companies have packed containers, and this is where your declarations and all the rest of it are required. They've packed containers, they haven't cleaned the container before they have sent it. The container might have some product in it that's not related to the nature of the product that you're sending. So I had somebody that imported water filtration equipment, and somebody might have been eating their lunch while they packed the container, and there was corn all down on the bottom of the container. That container then got held in customs and quarantine. It got unpacked, and it got cleaned and all the rest of it kind of thing. And then it got repacked and sent off to the customer. Approximately $4,000 worth of costs between storage and packing and movement and inspections and all the rest of it. So sometimes you might not find that your product will be sent back or rejected or anything like that. It'll be held up, it'll be inspected. If there's an issue with it, make sure your stuff's clean. Make sure you don't put products in your container that you haven't listed on your commercial invoice. Because if you get inspected by customs or quarantine this end, or you get x-rayed because they'll x-ray the outside of your container, and you've got products in there that you didn't include because you forgot to put it on there, or you're trying to avoid paying duties or taxes or anything like that on there, you might get 1 or 2 shipments through, but you will eventually get caught. And if you get caught and you get flagged, you'll have a problem. People with timber pallets, sometimes we find, I had a shipment that was coming in of tiles from China, and it was going to our major hardware store, the Bunnings one in Australia, and there was bark on the pallets. And obviously massive big issue as far as Australian quarantine is concerned. So they got containers inspected. And then if you consider the volume of containers that they were coming through, I mean, we're talking about thousands of containers that they have coming through throughout the course of the year. So they have X amount of containers that need to get inspected. And so say, for example, they might say, right, you've got to have 6 containers inspected. So they go through their 6. And then if one of the containers gets inspected and it gets found to have bark on a pallet again, you go back to another 6. And then you keep on going until such time that you are clear. You also find in some instances, if you have misdeclared product, if you have misdeclared weights, if you've misdeclared the commodity, if you've misdeclared the value, you might end up with a flag put against you as a manufacturer, because obviously we declare the manufacturer here in Australia at various different levels of the customs process. And if you do something wrong, then you will have a flag raised against your name as a manufacturer. So anybody then that tries to import your products and declare you as the manufacturer, it will automatically put up issues. This is why we stress to everybody, don't try and take shortcuts. Don't try and avoid the complexities of Australian customs. If you take the time to learn them and get them right, you save money by not incurring extra costs, and you save time. They're the biggest things. It seems like it's difficult to comply with, but if you follow the rules associated with it and make sure you do so, and you do so for every shipment, you make yourself easy to deal with. You make yourself easy to buy from, and you want to be easy to buy from, because the Australians don't want to have to. They don't want it to be difficult. They want it to be easy. Australians can be a bit lazy sometimes, except for in the cricket. They're not lazy in the cricket, as Rodney will tell you. But take the time to get your things right, and you will find that the Australian market will be quite receptive to you. And show that you know what it is that you're doing. So when you're talking about your product and what it is that you're selling, if you talk to them about the fact that you know what is required, and you know what documents you need to provide, and you've got the experience in being able to provide those documents, again, you become easy to buy from.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you very much. And here we are going to take one last question, and that is from Chintan. That there is a one you can say there is one situation, and what is to be done in that situation? That's what he's asking. If we have order and the payment term is on a scanned copy of BL, he was supposed to receive the payment on the scanned BL. The cargo is already left from the Indian port, and might be possible it's already reached to the Australian port. If buyer failed on payment, can we reverse the cargo without approval of the buyer?
Is it a full container or a less than
It's a
container?
full container. Yeah,
A full container. Okay. So obviously what you would need to do there is liaise with your freight forwarder who is sending the shipment on your behalf. And you are actually able to work with your freight forwarder to hold the shipment if you've not received your payment. So if you've already released the documentation through to them, then you will need to act very quickly, because as soon as the shipment arrives in Australia, if according to the shipping line, there is no hold on that cargo, as soon as they pay the duties and the taxes and the port charges, they can take that cargo and they can go from there. So you need to act very quickly to resolve the situation, but you should be able to change those terms in mid-transit as long as you can prove that you have not received the money.
But what if the cargo is under the Incoterm of FOB? I mean, the shipping or the sea freight is not under the control of exporter. So in that situation, how it's going to be controlled?
The obligations still, so say for example, from my perspective as a freight forwarder, so even if I'm doing the freight forwarding, if I'm faced with an original bill of lading where the shipper has done an original bill of lading, even if I'm organising the freight, my obligation still falls to the seller of the cargo until such time that that bill of lading has been released. So even though it's FOB terms, even though it's my customer here this side, if there is an original bill of lading in place and I release the cargo to my consignee without that original bill of lading, I'll be responsible for the value of that cargo, the commercial value of that cargo. So the original bill of lading is a very, very, very important piece. If you've already released that bill of lading, that's where I say you need to liaise with your freight forwarder immediately to see what can be changed if you're concerned about the payment. But my side, so say for example, my customer is Rodney, and Rodney is buying from you. And so Rodney's my customer, not you, and we're buying under FOB terms. But you sell to Rodney and the terms of your shipment have got an original bill of lading in place. If I ignore that bill of lading and I just give the cargo to Rodney, I'm responsible to you under international trade law for the value of that cargo. Very, very important to be very clear about the terms of your bills of lading.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, fine. So that is really nice of you. And it was great question and answer session. I think everybody has got their answer, and that was sufficient to to resolve your queries. So I'm going to share the details of Vanessa, and you can directly approach her as well. Yeah, I just would like to add some more services from Vanessa as well. That if you want to get some research report as well, that if you are going to provide your product name, HS code, and what exactly kind of the quality quantity that you are able to deal with, if you are providing this kind of the details to Vanessa, she is going to prepare the complete research report for having a entry for the market entry into the Australia. She can provide you the shipping and logistics services as well. She can provide you to B2B services as well. So there are lots of services what she can provide you. You can be directly in touch with her. That is not the issue as well. So you can take the benefit of her services and her company, like Rodney, Colin, number of teammates she's having, and who are very much expert into the customs and shipping, logistics, supply chain management, and every aspects of exports and imports. Right. So when you are going to be connected with specific Australian market, either you are going to import from Australia or either you are going to export to Australia, right? This is going to be the key link for you to get into touch with, and to avoid any kind of delay, to avoid any kind of custom queries, or to avoid any kind of delays into the shipping logistics, or any kind of it's about the documentations, about the freight, about the product, about the market, about the compliances, about the government rules and regulations. It may be anything or everything about this market or about the product. They are very much happy to help you out with any kind of queries, right? So here with just would like to thanks once again Vanessa and Rodney for sparing such a valuable time from your busy schedule, and for guiding these people to get enter into this wonderful export import business, and specifically to let them know about the rules, regulations, compliances, packaging, and customs and shipping and logistics concerned with the Australian market. So thank you very much, and thank you very much for being here.
No problem. It was a pleasure, and hopefully we've given you some information. There's a lot to cover, but some really good opportunities ahead of everybody, I think, and so a really good time to be in the market.
Yeah, thank you, Rodney. Thank you, Vanessa. So herewith we are concluding. Thank you very much, and have a nice day, everyone.
Have a good day.
Vanessa,
Bye.
good night, Rodney. Good evening, everyone. Bye bye. Take care.